Hey, Robert Unanue, thanks for being on Crossroads.
Thank you for having me. Please, thank you very much.
Now, everybody's talking about this food crisis. I know you actually came out and said there's going to be a food crisis, and I'd imagine you're the guy with the fingers on the pulse. What are you seeing in terms of this? What justifies that statement? It's a strong statement. What justifies it?
Well, first of all, a policy to of a war on fossil fuel
Hmm.
and policies that go against life and these progressive policies that are really destructive. When you look at our policies where we abandon women and children in Afghanistan, now there's millions of women and children being exiled in Ukraine, and that's because we projected tremendous weakness. It gave the green light to Putin, I believe. This morning you have North Korea saber rattling about nuclear. We're talking about nuclear as if it's morning coffee, like it's another topic. And this is we are on the precipice of food shortage, but we also are on the precipice of nuclear disasters. It kind of I don't mean to make light of it, but it kind of reminds me of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, where Redford and Newman are on the cliff, and Redford says, I can't jump, and Newman says, why? He says, I can't swim. And then Newman says, he starts laughing. He says, well, the fall's going to kill you. So that's the precipice we're on. And food is definitely one of those with between Russia and the Ukraine producing 50% of our fertilizer. Here in this country, fertilizer has quadrupled. And people will be planting less and yielding less because of the cost and because of the lack of good yield. They produce 30% between them of the world's wheat, 20% corn. There's 2.5 million acres of sunflowers to be planted. They have sand for fracking, sand for glass, but none of these are going to be in southeast planted. In southeast Ukraine, where you have the planting season is now. Uh, they've bombed the irrigation systems. They're cutting off the ports. Well, Mariupol and then also Odessa is next. They will landlock Ukraine and prevent them from exporting. But right now, the big problem is we're in the planting season, and people are not going to plant. It's going to send food prices spiraling, and the biggest component again of food is transportation, which is tied to us giving away our independence, our freedom by being oil independent and giving it away. Shipping it in a pipeline is free, but when you put it on a ship with rates 10 times what they were 2 years ago, we are buying oil at retail and making ourselves like, Joe Biden said in the campaign, no, they're going to put you all in chains. He's putting us in chains with this idiotic philosophy of a war against fossil fuel, where we give up our independence. When you're not independent, when you're not free, you are a slave. And we have all the natural resources. We have food, we have oil, we have a mighty army, and we are a might to be reckoned with. But we are also the defenders of people around the world, the innocent and the defenseless. And if we fall, which that's not out of the realm, how weak we are. If we fall, who are we going to defend? Who is there to defend these people? Millions of women and children. It's disgusting.
Hmm. Yeah, no, it's concerning times we're in. Let's look at the granular level. You were talking about kind of the realities of fertilizer. I mean, guys like myself, the most farming I ever did was grandma's garden. You know what I mean? What does it mean practically if farmers don't have enough fertilizer? And what are the numbers on this? Like, what's the real situation with this? What does that mean for us?
Well, the numbers on fertilizers is they've gone up fourfold in this country, and it's not really going to affect us as much as it will countries or the African countries and countries around Europe and all that, because they depend on Ukraine and Russia for food, for bread, for fertilizer to plant. And for example, I believe Ukraine exports a lot of their fertilizer to Peru, and Peru is kind of the bread basket for Europe. So the U.S., we are independent in food, but we used to be independent in oil, and now we're going to have to pay for it. A lot of the fertilizer comes from natural gas, and so the potash. There are other types of fertilizer, but the biggest portion is comes from fuel. And when you have a war on fossil fuel, we give up our independence and freedom. Then we're just making things cost very much more. You're going to see it in food, but also in the transportation of food and everything. We bring in coconut water, getting granular. We're getting coconut water from Thailand. It used to cost $1,800 a container with 1,300 cases. It's $1.44 a case. Now it's $20,000. It's $15 a case. That's an inflation, a tenfold inflation, just in the cost of transportation, which is one of the biggest components of cost.
Geez, well, I wasn't aware actually that fuel ties so closely into the fertilizer business because we're hearing about these natural gas shortages in Europe. We know Russia controls the natural gas. We know that the Biden administration has been trying to stop the the pipelines and the fracking and so on, which would give us that. What you mentioned though that the U.S. is energy independent still, or we're independent in terms of food. How do you see this happening in the U.S.? Will this really affect Americans then if we're still food independent?
We're in pretty good shape there. We can be like Marie Antoinette and say, let them eat cake. There's no bread, let them eat cake. But where we're not in good shape is as Mother Teresa said when she was here years ago, we are one of the greatest economies of the world, but we're morally bankrupt. And we're moving away from God. So I think it's, man has not progressed. God created humanity, but humanity has created the way to destroy itself, nuclear, chemical, biological. Now with food, we're using food as a weapon. We have to change. We have to move closer to God.